Hello and welcome back to Retfurb. So on today's video we've got this Technics turntable, which is an SL-J100R model, and it's got broken hinges. So I'm going to show the procedure for repairing the hinge or replacing the hinge. You can obviously skip the repair part of the video and just see the procedure for stripping it down and how you do replace that part. So you can see it's a Technics SL-J110R, but this will apply to other Technics turntables and probably other manufacturers, to be honest. So you can see I've got both parts of the hinge, luckily, so it can be repaired. So now I'm just going to start stripping it down, removing the turntable parts. So you can see now I'm on the metal section of the actual turntable, and once you get this far you can lift it off, remove the belt from the motor, and that just lifts off easily. And now turning it over, there's 4 bolts which are on the feet of the turntable, and then one small screw at the top, which you can see in the middle, which just holds the tray in place. So now those screws are undone, that will just lift off. You can see I'm pointing there to where the hinges are. So there's 2 small little tabs, you can just see in where the hinges are. So you need to get a screwdriver there and just move these little tabs out of place, and then the hinge will sort of push out. Obviously being careful, you don't want to snap these little tabs off. You can see I'm just using the screwdriver just to move those out of the way and then push in at the same time. And then you can flip it over and get a screwdriver to carefully prise that hinge part out of the body. So you can see there I'm just pointing out those 2 little small locating tabs. Those are the bits that you just need to push out from underneath. And now I'm just trying the 2 parts of the hinges up against each other, just making sure I've got all the pieces in place so that I can glue it back together. So with this, the spring will be too strong for the repair, so you have to remove that spring before you go further, and then we can glue the parts in place after that. You don't want to use the spring on this side because there'll be a weak point where the repair is, even though I'm going to try and do it as strong as I can. Most of the hinges that you'll find on eBay or online that are replacement hinges just look like 3D printed parts without the spring in, so this will be no different than doing that. So now I'm just going to go on and use some solvent-based degreaser and just clean off the hinge, make sure there's no grease or anything on there, and make sure it's prepped for the next stage. So now I can just use a little bit of sandpaper just to key up the area where the glue's got to go. So you want something fairly coarse for this, something around 120 grit I would say, and just go around and key up the areas where the glue's going to go. On both parts, the small little tab which is broken off as well, that needs keying up. So I've got some bicarbonate of soda and super glue, which obviously to some people probably seem a bit of a weird combination, but the bicarb almost acts as a bridging cement. So when you put the glue on and then use the bicarbonate of soda on it, it then bridges that area and goes off rock hard. Now I'm not saying it's totally, indestructible, that it will break, it can break again, but it just gives it that little bit more of a bridge than what just normal super glue will do. If you put normal super glue on there, it'll probably break pretty quick, to be fair. So doing it this way, you just add that extra bit onto the surface, which gives it that extra strength. So you can see I'm just put a little bit of super glue just to hold this part in place before I move forward, and then I'm just going to put the bicarbonate of soda on there, which will just bridge over that little bit of glue and then build that up slightly. Now you do need to be careful building it up. You don't want to go too mad because it might get in the way of the hinge movement. So if that does happen, you just need to scrape that little bit off or get a bit of sandpaper and just sand it down and make sure that it's not in the way when the hinge moves. I actually had to scrape a tiny little bit off because I did go a bit far with it, but it wasn't too bad, it wasn't too much, it was nice and easy to do. You can use a bit of sandpaper and just get that bit off, and just moving around the rest of the hinge parts where it's broken and just putting on as much as I can without causing any issues. And now just trying it back together, I'm just going to put the pin back in there in place and make sure it's all moving okay. As you can see, there's no issues with movement there. And now I'm just going to glue that pin in place onto the hinge part as well. Now again, you need to be careful at this point, you don't want to put too much glue on. If that sort of seeps through into both parts, it will stop that hinge moving correctly. So I've just put a little bit on the outside, then got a bit of tissue to sort of take the excess off, and then put some bicarb on the top, which again just gives it that extra strength. And now the actual repair part's done, I'm just going to get a bit of sandpaper and knock a bit of that bicarbonate super glue off just to put it a bit more flush. And then I've just sprayed it now with some black to make it look a little bit more uniform. Again, you probably won't see it that much when it's on the turntable itself. And now pushing it back into the turntable, so that just clips back down in place, and then the hinge is locked in place with those 2 tabs. And now we can flip the turntable over and put the 5 screws underneath, the 4 for the feet and the 1 at the top. So obviously at this point, if you had replacement hinges, you would have skipped the repair and you'd be straight here now doing the refit. And now putting the main metal part of the turntable back in place and just making sure that belt goes back over the motor once you've done that. And then clipping the small middle locating section part in place. You need to be careful with this. There's some tabs on there which these break quite easily, so you need to be quite careful with that. So this little piece I'm showing here was missing on the turntable. It just locks the arm in place when it's not in use. So I'm just going to replace that as well. I had an old turntable which was faulty, so I've just used that. And now you can see the hinges are all working okay, the lid's back on. So now I'm just going to use some polish to go over the lid, just to polish it up a little bit. You can see the lid was quite scratched, like they all are to be honest from use. This one does have some deep scratches on it also, which take a little bit more doing. Now I'm just going over it quickly really. You can go, really far with it and get it really nice. Like here, I'm just going over with some 1500 grit wet and dry sandpaper because some deep scratches, and just getting them out first with the sandpaper and then again going over the polish. So now this is fast forwarded, I've polished it all, and now I'm just cleaning up the main part of the turntable before I put the lid back on. So again with the polishing, I just went over the freckler and the mini mop and just kept going over it. You obviously got to be very careful, you don't get it too hot, just taking your time really. So now we'll just do a quick demo just to show it all working.
Baby's found somebody new, or is.
And as you can see, it looks great. The lid, just with that polish up, makes it look 100 times better. And obviously with the repaired hinge or the replacement hinges, it will be back to working as it should be. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. It's really appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.